Hello everyone, welcome back to Becca's Book Nook. Today I'm going to be ranking the books in the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, ever since I saw Christine do it over at Pulling Bananas Books. I've been watching her videos since like the 7th grade, and she was a huge inspiration to me to start this channel. So when I saw her do that video, I knew that I had to do it since I love her and I love the Shadowhunter Chronicles. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into this video for you guys today. Also, I will say that obviously these are all my personal opinions, and if you don't agree with them, then I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone. Please feel free to comment your opinions down below. I'd love to hear them. But yeah, this is just how I personally feel about the series, having read them multiple times and sort of lived my life around the Shadowhunter Chronicles because I love it so much. I first read the Mortal Instruments series back in the 7th grade, so about 7 years ago, and then I read The Infernal Devices not long after, and then I read The Dark Artifices as they were coming out, as well as the Last Hours series. But I did just reread the series in its entirety leading up to the Chain of Iron release, so they are all fresh in my brain and I ranked them all as I was reading. So yeah, I'm gonna just jump right into the video. Obviously, if you haven't read these books, then there might be some spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled or have any of the series ruined for you, then maybe just click away from this video. I will hold up the book that I'm going to be talking about, so if you don't want to hear any spoilers, then maybe just mute me while I'm talking about that book. I am only going to be discussing the actual novels of the Shadowhunter Chronicles and not be including the novellas, just because I feel like they don't really fit in personally to my ideal series, and they just are all like, all of the novellas are just below the actual books on my ranking, so I didn't really feel the need to include them. So I am only going to be doing the 14 books, I believe, that are in her actual series. I sincerely apologize in advance for the rambling that's going to be going on in this video. I am pretty passionate about all these books, but I feel like sometimes my thoughts just sort of run wild and I don't know when exactly to rein them in, so apologies in advance. But yeah, let's jump right into the video. Coming in last place is, of course, City of Ashes from the Mortal Instruments series. Anyone who knows me knows that this is by far my least favorite book. It's not even on the same scale as the other ones. The book is just uncomfortable. The whole siblings, are they not trope is just a little bit too much for me. I don't think it bothered me as much the first time I read it, just because I was younger and Clary and Jace were just like literally the loves of my life, and I just wanted them to be together no matter what. So I feel like it just didn't affect me as much that we didn't know if they were actually siblings or not, and a part of me was like, there's no way they could be siblings. But having reread the series, it was super uncomfortable and all the characters were really annoying to me, and really the only part about this book that I genuinely enjoy is Simon turning into a vampire, just because I think it adds a new level of depth to the story, and it sort of sets us up for the rest of the books with the whole Downworlder alliance and stuff like that. So yeah, that is definitely last place for me, coming in at 14th, and let's move on to the next one. Coming in 13th place, we have City of Fallen Angels, also from the Mortal Instruments series. This book has always just sort of felt lacking to me personally, especially because Jason Clary's whole relationship is just annoying. I want them to be together the entire book, but both of them are like too self-conscious about things and not communicating with each other that they're barely together. There are obviously some humorous moments, like Jace with the mango in the grocery store, and it's cool to get introduced to Jordan, but also the whole Maya, Izzy, Simon sort of love triangle thing is slightly amusing, but it's no surprise that he's gonna pick Izzy, so it's not that enjoyable. Overall, I just feel like this book would be way higher up on the scale if it wasn't so frustrating for me personally to read. The only thing that didn't put it in last place is the big fight at the end on the top of the roof with Lilith, because it was so enjoyable and I'm like hanging onto the edge of my seat for that whole fight. But yeah, this book definitely deserves second last place in my opinion. In 12th place, we have City of Bones, the first book in the Mortal Instruments series. Sort of feel bad for the Mortal Instruments because it's not looking too great in the grand scheme of things at the moment, but it is personally my least favorite one of her series, so that's probably why they're all lower on the scale. This book is great. All of these books are great. It's the first introduction we get to the New York Institute and all of these new characters, but I personally did feel that it was a little bit slow. I believe the first time I tried to read it, I couldn't quite get into it, and this most recent time, I really just pushed through so that I could get to the rest of the books, but that's not personally a quality that I enjoy in a book. I would like to enjoy it right off the bat. So that's really the only reason it's so low down on the scale. I love the characters. I love the introduction to the world. I love meeting Jace for the first time. He used to be like the literal love of my life as a child. Still is love of my life. But yeah, the whole ending with them finding out their siblings also just sort of made my stomach turn a little bit because it's just not enjoyable to read. Number 11 is City of Lost Souls, also in the Mortal Instruments series. This book also made my stomach turn a little bit, made me a little queasy when reading about Sebastian and how he thinks him and Clary should be together, like your siblings. It's just a little bit much. I think she could have pushed away from that storyline. It was just a little bit much for me to read, especially at this age when I sort of, I guess, understood it a little bit more, and it just made me a little bit more uncomfortable. He's definitely a great villain. Like, if he can make me like genuinely sick to my stomach, he's a great villain. But this whole dynamic of this book also just bothered me because, once again, Jace and Clary are not together because it's not really Jace. They only had like one moment in the whole book where it was really Jace, and then he just quickly switched back to evil twin Jace, and it was just, felt very soap opera-ish to me, and I don't know, I wasn't really vibing with it. I will say that I loved reading about Simon and Isabel in this book. I love seeing their relationship develop, and that was probably my favorite part of this book. I just kind of wanted to be with them the whole time. So yeah, that's number 11 for me. We only have one Mortal Instruments book left, so I guess we'll see where that lands. Yeah, let's move on to our top 10. In my 10th spot, we have Clockwork Angel, the first book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. The Infernal Devices is definitely my favorite one of Cassie Clare's series because I love England in the 1800s. I love reading about that whole world at the London Institute, and Will Herondale is literally my favorite male literary character of all time. I obviously love the characters. I love Jem and I love Tessa and Charlotte and Henry and just everyone at the London Institute. But once again, because it's the first book, it was a little bit slow getting into it. I liked that the prologue was from Will and Jem's perspective so that we sort of jumped right into the shadow world. But then the beginning with Tessa getting to London and the whole part of her with the Dark Sisters just really doesn't sit well with me. I really don't enjoy that part. I sort of always just want to skip past to when she's at the London Institute, which I would never do, but it's just, there's a part of me that wants to. I love Tessa and Will's first interaction with each other, and it does hurt me a bit that you can see both the boys fall in love with her like right away. But yeah, this book is amazing, and it hurts me a little that it's in my 10th spot, but I guess there are more books that deserved higher on the list. Let me know if you agree with this choice and what series is your favorite in the comments down below. In 9th place, we have Lord of Shadows, the second book in the Dark Artifices trilogy. This book is obviously super enjoyable for me to read, as all of them are, but there are a few parts of it that make it this far down on the list, so I will discuss them. Big spoilers for Lord of Shadows. If you haven't read it, please mute now. Livy's death genuinely destroyed me, and I think that's why this book is not one of my favorites. I know it happens like right at the end of the book, but I was a mess when I finished reading this for the first time and reading it for the second time. Just like a couple months ago, I was reading this and just crying because it's heartbreaking, and you know Julian's gonna react awfully, and all the rest of the Blackthorns, and Ty is just gonna be absolutely heartbroken. So yeah, that definitely puts the book lower down on the list, though I do enjoy when a book has the ability to make me cry. This was more painful than heartwarming. I said earlier that I only had one more Mortal Instruments book to discuss, but I was wrong. I actually have two, because number 8 is City of Glass, the third book in the Mortal Instruments series. I absolutely adore this book. It used to be my favorite one when I first read the series. I love that we find out the truth about everything. We find out Jace's real parentage. We find out all about Clary's mother's story and about her being in the circle. And we have the big battle, and just everything sort of comes to fruition. And it is just such a phenomenal book. Finding out about Sebastian and how that's her real brother and he's not actually Sebastian Verlac really just blew my mind when I was younger and first reading this series. It was unreal that I didn't predict it. I could never have predicted it. I remember my mom reading it and just knowing right away that he was going to be her real brother, and I was like, how the hell did you possibly guess that? Because I never would have guessed it as a child. And rereading this book, I sort of got brought back to that time in my life when I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was just sort of sitting there in anticipation as I was reading, and I really loved that that book could bring me back to that time in my life. In 7th place, we have the last book in the Mortal Instruments series, City of Heavenly Fire. Once again, this book destroyed me and is genuinely one of my favorites. The whole situation at the end with Simon broke my heart into a million pieces when I was younger, and just the hope that we got at the end when his band is named the Mortal Instruments just sort of started mending it back together. But yeah, just the heartbreak I felt when I read this book. I had never read a book that had destroyed me as much as this one, and I remember me and my friend Callie just calling each other and crying because it was genuinely just soul crushing. I love this book because Jace and Clary finally get to be together after like waiting genuinely 6 books for them to actually be happy. They finally get to be together. I absolutely adore the introduction we get to the Blackthorns. They're so young and little, and it's so painful to see Julian have to kill his father, especially because since I had already read the other series and I knew how heartbroken it left him as a young adult. Overall, I adore this book. I love this series. It's just my least favorite of her series. I don't want you guys to think I really hate the books. I enjoy them all, obviously. In 6th place, we have Clockwork Princess, the final book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. Oh honey, if you thought City of Heavenly Fire destroyed me, maybe we shouldn't even discuss Clockwork Princess. Major spoilers for Clockwork Princess. If you haven't read it, please go read it and then come back. I genuinely thought that rereading this book wouldn't put me in as much pain as it did the first time. I was severely mistaken. I cried for 3 hours after finishing this book a couple months ago. I genuinely still don't think that I can discuss it without crying. Seeing Tessa be engaged to Jem and knowing how much that it hurts Will is just really hard to read. For me personally, Will is my favorite, and it's just always really hard for me to read about someone having to watch the person they love be with someone else. I feel like that's like one of the hardest things that people have to do. The ending, the epilogue, is what really destroys me. Having to see Tessa finally happy with Will, and then Will leaves her, and then having to see her get back with Jem, but her knowing that eventually Jem's gonna leave her. It's all just very emotional for me personally. And the book has a rather happy ending with Will and Jem still technically alive, even if he can't really be with them all the time. It has a remotely happy ending. And then you just go into the epilogue and it just destroys you. So Cassie knew what she was doing there. Genuinely broke my heart. And once again, I think the reason this book is so low is just because of how painful it was for me to read, and still is always going to be for me to read. It definitely would be higher up on the list if I hadn't smeared like half the pages with my tears. Moving on to the top 5. In my 5th spot is Lady Midnight, the first book in the Dark Artifices trilogy. This book was so much fun to read. The introduction to the LA Institute and just all of the Blackthorns. It was so exciting. I remember the first time I read this book, I was on March break in Myrtle Beach in the 9th grade, and I was just reading this, chilling by a pool, and everything was going so great, and then the ending, once again, broke my heart. I really thought this was gonna be one of the books that ended happily. I don't know which one of these books ends perfectly happily, but I really thought this was gonna be one of them, until Emma learns about the curse, and then decides that she needs to get with Mark, thus breaking Julian's heart instead of just communicating with him again. I understand why she can't tell him, I guess. I just felt like she could have gone about it in a less painful way for him, maybe. He had just finally been happy for like the first time in his life, and then he got broken again, so kind of hurt me. I loved falling in love with Julian and Emma. I loved their forbidden love story. It's one of my favorite tropes. Their romantic scenes were amazing. One of my favorite scenes is when they're dancing together at the ball. It's so romantic. So yeah, I love this book. It's why it deserves number 5, and let's move on. In 4th place, we have Chain of Gold, the first book in the Last Hours trilogy. Obviously, book 3 is not out yet of this trilogy, but I have enjoyed the first 2 way more than I had ever expected to, and that's why both of them are at the top of this list. Chain of Gold was just so much more than I had expected it to be. The early 1900s in England, the ball gowns, the picnics, the dances, the relationships were just everything to me when I read this book. Delia is such a badass. I literally want to be her. James is such an angel. I literally want to marry him. I love Matthew and the rest of the Merry Thieves. Grace makes me want to rip my hair out and then maybe rip her hair out. I love pretty much everyone in this book. It was so cool that Belial was like the main villain, and we got to sort of learn a bit more about Tessa's past. The whole thing with Lucy and Jesse Blackthorne is super interesting. I was super intrigued to see where it was going to go from there. And yeah, the whole ending just left me hanging on the edge. I was like, oh, Cordelia's in love with James, and James is in love with Cordelia, but he doesn't know it because of this stupid bracelet. And now they're gonna get married. What's gonna happen? Oh my god. In 3rd place, we have this monster of a book, Queen of Air and Darkness, the last book in the Dark Artifices trilogy. So much happens in this book. Thinking about it now, I could not tell you every big thing that happens throughout this story, because it is literally, I think, almost 1,000 pages long. Julian drives me absolutely bananas in this book because he has his stupid no emotions potion, which I guess makes sense because Livy died and he must be absolutely distraught. It's just really hard to read and really annoying, especially because Emma wants to be there for him and he just won't let her. The only part of this book that doesn't put it like slightly higher on my list is the fact that I felt like barely anything happened with the Parabatai curse. Yeah, they got big and they hurt a few people that were deserving of the hurt, by the way. But they didn't really get punished for it at all. Like, nothing happened, really. It didn't really feel like anything actually happened from the curse, which I guess is good. It just, I don't know, it felt a little bit lacking for me. The ending with Alec and Magnus's wedding obviously brought a tear to my eye because I've just been reading about their relationship for like a good portion of my life, 7 years. And it obviously just made me really happy, and everyone seemed to be remotely happy at the end. Emma and Julian are finally together. Christina, Mark, and Kieran are gonna make it all work. Like, everyone just seems to be decently happy. In 2nd place, we have my newest love, Chain of Iron, the 2nd book in the Last Hours trilogy. I could not put this book down for anything. I missed 2 classes while reading this, I think, and it just didn't even occur to me that I was supposed to be anywhere else but in the London Institute in 1903. This book was wonderful. I'm not going to say too much about it because I do have a whole Chain of Iron review up on my channel that you can go watch if you've already read it and want to hear my thoughts on it. It's a little bit lengthy, but to be honest, I could have made it way longer if I really wanted to. So 19 minutes is about as good as it's going to get. And this book just left me on a massive cliffhanger and in tears, as most of Cassie's books do, apparently. She just likes to hurt me. But I love her anyway. I love the books. So yeah, that's my number 2 spot. And if you've been keeping track, you know what's going to be number 1. And if you know me, you know what's going to be number 1. So let's just get right into it. In first place of my ranking Shadowhunter Chronicles books is the only one I don't have in hardcover, Clockwork Prince, the second book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. This book has everything I could ever want: romance, comedy, big fight scenes, the death of Nate Gray, my least favorite character, and Tessa and Will get to be together, Tessa and Jem get to be together. Absolutely an amazing book, 100% my favorite one. There was no question, nothing even comes close to this in my opinion. And yet, the ending breaks my heart more than any other one of these books. The ending of this book hurt me more than any book has ever hurt me, and I've read a lot of books with awful endings, but this one still haunts me to this day. I think about it all the time. My sweet baby, William Owen Herondale, has been hurting for half his life, thinking that he can't make anyone love him or else they will die. He's pushed everyone away for several years. He's only kept Jem close because, as horrible as it is, he knew he was going to die anyway. Tessa comes in. He falls in love with her. He can't draw her in because he's worried something terrible is going to happen to her. Finally, he realizes that the curse is a lie. It doesn't exist. He's been pushing people away for a majority of his life for no reason. And so he goes to her, tells her he loves her, tells her they should be together. But his buddy, Jem, his parabatai, the person he loves most in the world, has already proposed, and she's said yes. Tell me that's not the most heartbreaking thing you've ever heard in your life. It breaks me. It makes me bawl my eyes out. I can't read that chapter without just breaking down, sobbing. It's absolutely beautiful, well written, just the most wonderful book I've read in all the years that I've been reading, and I'll never get over how much I love it. It will always be my favorite. No matter how many other books she writes, this will always be my favorite. And I will get it in hardcover soon. I've slowly been collecting all these books in hardcover at thrift stores and stuff like that so I don't have to pay for them, and I found every single one except for Clockwork Prince. So eventually I'll find it, and then I'll have a complete hardcover collection of my favorite author's work. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I want to hear your thoughts on my ranking. If you are absolutely appalled by it, or if you somewhat agree with it, please comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me. Comment down below what your number 1 Shadowhunter book is. I'll link all my socials down below if you want to follow me on there. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!